In-ear monitors. If you are thinking about going the in-ear route, it's really important to have a good understanding of your own expectations versus reality. What are the benefits and what are the challenges of using in-ears? Is there really a big difference between universal in-ears versus custom molds? And if you do go the in-ear route, would you really be using it for the proper applications? All of that and so much more are going to be answered in this video. What's up, everyone? My name is Matthew Dale. I am here to help you play better, sound great, and understand more. And I've got a bit of a confession to make. I am a huge music theory nerd. And I also wholeheartedly believe that anyone can have a really good understanding of music theory. And to get to that point of understanding, you really need a solid foundation of just the core musical principles. And you can find that solid foundation in my Essential Music Theory cheat sheet. This is my 100% free gift to you just for tuning in and watching this video, and you can find it linked in the description below. So, in-ear monitors, let's talk about the benefits first. This is certainly the part that gets talked about most when having the conversation around in-ears, but really it comes down to your own individual control of the sound that you want on stage. Now, individual mixes isn't necessarily a unique thing to in-ear systems, like, everyone on stage could have their own personal wedge, but in-ear monitors also give you that ability to have that mix anywhere on stage. So in-ears are a great solution for singers and performers that are walking around a big stage. With modern day digital mixers, you have a number of options for actually controlling your own mix on, say, a smartphone or a tablet, and you can really dial in exactly the sounds that you want when performing on a stage. Another big benefit of in-ear monitors is isolation. If we are limiting ourselves to only hearing what is in here and rejecting everything else, we can hear individual parts and individual instruments, whether that be ourselves or others, a lot clearer. You're basically reducing the volume of everything else to, almost zero, and then controlling your individual mix from there. And the other benefit of using in-ears is really lowering your own volume, your own performance volume, and keeping things at safer levels for your hearing. We've probably all heard of the old rock stars from the 60s and 70s and 80s really losing their hearing because of such high stage volumes. And in-ear monitoring allows us to hear everything that we want to hear very clean and clear at safer listening volumes. But it's not all sunshine and daisies. There are some very real challenges that we as musicians face when using in-ears. And oddly enough, as much as it was a benefit, isolation can be a huge challenge when it comes to in-ear monitoring. If you don't have a drum set mic'd up really well and, going through a soundboard that's giving you a very nice drum mix, your drums will sound very thin and not very good at all. You'll almost just want to take those things out so you can hear a really good drum mix in the room. If people are trying to communicate with you on stage, you won't hear them. This is one of, my big pet peeves when performing with in-ears, and, I'll stop playing, I'll step off stage, or I'll get done playing, and, someone from the audience will come up to me to talk to me, and all I hear is that, and, I have to take my ears out, and I have to say, I'm sorry, I didn't hear a thing you said, please repeat yourself, and we all, know how much we hate repeating ourselves over and over again. I have another good story about this. I was playing for worship at a church a little while ago, and we were rehearsing, and in the rehearsal, of course, the drum is already behind a drum shield and everyone is on in-ears, and our worship director was, hey, so-and-so drummer, can you hit these drums harder? I'm not really feeling the drums too much. I could really use some more drums. Be louder on the drums. And our drummer said, I'm hitting these things almost as hard as I can. So I don't know what you want me to do about that. And that really comes down from having an inaccurate representation of the amount of drum volume being played through the level of isolation going through the in-ear system. So really that would tell me that something needs to happen somewhere in the chain, the signal chain on the soundboard, whether, the drums are being compressed way too much, if the mic placement is off and the mics aren't placed appropriately, or if there's a gain staging problem. No amount of how hard can I hit these things is going to change an improper signal chain. And the level of isolation that in-ears have can just exemplify those already existing problems. Probably one of the biggest challenges that we think of right away when going the in-ear route is the expense. It's expensive. I've got a couple of my different in-ears through the years here. These are the in-ears that I started with. And I use these for probably almost 10 years or so to great effect. These are Audio-Technica E50s, and I know you really can't see them, so well on camera, but I will link to these in the description below. These are AT E50s, and these are pretty good, but these are actually probably more of a budget in-ear, but they still come in at around $200. Yes, I know that Apple AirPods are supposed to be amazing, and the $179 price tag is nothing to scoff at. And these aren't even wireless. They come with wire and everything. And these are $200. What's going on? Well, in-ear monitors are expensive. They're pro audio gear, and they come with a pro audio price tag. Now, if you go the custom molded route, you're gonna spend a lot more. These are the in-ears that I use exclusively now. These are 64 audio A4Ts, and they come in at right around $1,000. These are custom molded to fit my ear perfectly. They have 4 drivers on the inside. We'll talk more about that in a bit. And these come in at a hefty price tag of, yes, $1,000. But that's only one side of the equation. That's just the listening part. What about actually sending and receiving the information? Well, using a wireless in-ear rig, you can expect to spend another $1,000 on average for just the transmitter and the receiver to send your mix. And when it comes to the wireless receivers, you do not want to go the cheap route when going wireless. You will ultimately be disappointed with whatever you got on the cheap route, and you will be upgrading later. Just save yourself the time and the headache and get the best wireless transmitter for in-ears that you can afford at the time. So I hope that sheds a little bit of light on, what are the benefits, what are the challenges. Let's talk about the actual in-ear monitors themselves. You probably saw where I was going with this before, but these are not headphones. These are not like your Apple AirPods or any other sort of, nicer consumer grade headphone. These use a very specific type of speaker, if you want to call it that. It's not a dynamic driver like a actual speaker would be, like a studio monitor or a speaker that would go in your ears. These use something called balanced armature drivers. And the benefit of a balanced armature driver is more fidelity and a more accurate tone. And really what we're going for here is an accurate representation of the instruments that we have going through our system. A lot of times consumer grade headphones will, maybe add a little bit more bass or add a little bit more treble for that smiley face EQ curve to get things to sound a little more hi-fi. We don't want that. We don't want our monitors to sound good necessarily. We want them to sound accurate and flat. The other thing that plagues new people coming over to the in-ear world is really getting a proper seal. Balanced armature drivers require a good seal in the ear canal to really develop the bass frequencies accurately. If you don't have a good seal, you will have no bass in your in-ear monitors. And of course, if you're a bass player or a drummer, this is going to be really annoying and you will not want to use in-ear monitors. So I mentioned this already, but I'll mention it again a little bit more in detail. My Audio-Technica E50s are a single balanced armature driver in each ear. I've used these for about 10 years, and these were overall pretty good. I was pretty happy with them. I didn't feel like I needed to spend more money for custom molds until I reached a very particular point in my musical career, which I'll get to. Here's a little bit of a step up. The Audio-Technicas are about $200. These are Shure SE425s. These are dual drivers, so dual balanced armature drivers in either ear, and these come in at $270 roughly. And that's a little bit of a better value. You get more frequency separation, you get more clarity out of these than with a single driver. And at the extra $70, it's really not too much if you're already going to be spending the $200. Now, these both are universal, so these are meant to go in anyone's ear, right? And you have to spend a lot of time with the different ear tips to get a really good seal with the universal molds. That's probably the most annoying part about them. Don't be surprised if you need a larger tip in either ear, because your ears might be slightly different on either side. And like I said earlier, in-ear monitors really break down when you don't have a good seal. You will not have the proper isolation, and you will not have the proper bass response and frequency response out of your in-ears, which is really where the conversation of custom molds come in. These are my 64 audio A4Ts, so 4 drivers on either side. There's a lot of clarity, a lot of frequency separation. I hear my lows nice and rich and deep and tight. In these, I hear my highs really clear. The mid-range is really focused. I can hear everything really clear in these monitors, which is really what you want. But the real big benefit of going custom mold is you will always get a proper seal 100% of the time, because these are fit to your ears. Now, these will have about a 10-year life shelf before you either need new ones or you'll need to get these remolded, because our ear does change over time, usually in about a decade or so. And of course, with a proper seal, you get incredible isolation out of custom molds. I will not hear a thing when I have these in. Now, 64 Audio does have different filters that you can install. I've got the filter installed with the maximum amount of isolation, but you can also step it down in like 5 decibel intervals or something like that. So I might try that at some point, get a new filter to get a little less isolation if I want to try to have something of a conversation with people while I've got my in-ears in. But the level of isolation you can achieve just on the custom molds themselves is great. But another very real benefit to going the custom mold route is your in-ears won't be shaking around and moving around on you while you are performing. The real reason I went ahead and stepped up and got these wasn't necessarily for the audio fidelity, although that was great. It wasn't necessarily for the isolation, although that was great. These don't move when you're performing. And when I started playing with my band, The Prophecy Show, we're a tribute to Trans-Siberian Orchestra, so our live show is very active. I'm moving around constantly. I'm moving around all the time. I'm shaking my head. I'm headbanging, the whole nine, you name it. I would constantly be adjusting my in-ears during the show. I tried the skin tape, and I tried to tape them down, tape them down behind my ears, try to tape the cable on the back of my neck. It was a mess, and the tape still didn't work. I would be constantly, running off stage and, getting that universal back in. As soon as I got custom molds, all of that was solved. These do not move once they are in your ears unless you are physically taking them out. Now, in-ears and using an in-ear monitor system may not be the right course of action for you. Now, if you are playing in a pretty big production, or if you are playing in big shows, or if you are in a very large space like a church, then you will enjoy the amount of isolation that in-ears do provide. Old churches are notorious for just being massive echo chambers. And if you're running all of your instruments, with live sound on a stage, then things can get muddy really, really, really fast. Cleaning up the stage volume and going to an in-ear rig will solve a lot of that muddiness. Now, if you're playing in your own cover band and you want the benefit of in-ears, you can certainly do this, but I would suggest that you use your own self-sufficient system. So you would want to travel around with your own mixer dedicated to mixing your band's in-ear rig. And if you're using outside front of house techs, then you'll want to get some kind of splitter to split to front of house. These can be expensive as well. Or if you're running your own front of house, then what I do with my mixer is I'll set up my mixer on the side of a stage as the monitor mixer, but then if I'm mixing front of house, or if I have someone mixing front of house, I'll just set this up to a router and they will mix off of an iPad. And the iPad software for this mixer is actually pretty good, so there's really been no issues there. The modern digital mixing systems that we have available for us today are really good, so that's a lot easier if you're going that route. If you're playing festival gigs, or if you are playing a multi-band show, you do not want to use in-ears. And I personally made this mistake a couple of months ago when I played a show with a band that was, we were one of the openers. There was an opener, there was us, and then the headliner. And when you are an opener for a show, you do not get a sound check. You basically get a line check just to make sure that everything is working, and then the engineer will basically mix the band during your first song. And I made the big mistake of going in. I wanted to get, my own mix. I wanted to try to make things easier, to have like a silent stage going and, all of that stuff. And when we got there, we had 20 minutes for our glorified line check, and I tried to get something of a mix together after getting everything set up and everything actually, line checked and sound checked and everything. And by the time I finally got a mix, it was like, okay, that's enough, that's good. Sure, a little bit more of that, and bam, we had to go on. Well, I had the worst monitor experience, whether I'm using in-ears or monitors on stage, the absolute worst I've ever experienced, probably will ever experience, because I will not make that mistake again. The proper course of action for me should have been bring a monitor for the stage. Whether that was a guitar cabinet or an FRFR monitor, have the stage volume, or go through the wedges that were already there and get a decent mix that everyone is happy with. And if you're playing smaller gigs like bar gigs, or if you're like a solo musician and you're doing solo acoustic gigs or something like that, you probably don't want to use in-ears. Not because the challenges will outweigh the benefits, but usually when you're in that situation, I know this is true for me, there is a social element of, being a band in a bar, or being a solo musician at a winery or something like this. There's a social element. People are going to throw out requests. People are going to talk to you. You are going to want to engage with your audience. And in-ears with the level of isolation are going to make that really, really, really challenging. So I really hope that you guys found that informative, and that gives you a lot to think about when considering in-ear monitors. Yes, they have a ton of benefits associated with them, but if you are not going to be using them in the proper application, they can lead to a terrible monitoring experience. And if you are interested in this topic, go ahead and hit the subscribe button, because I'm going to be doing a future video where I actually take you through a mix, and I mix my own in-ears so you can hear, what I would like to hear in my own in-ear mix. Leave me a comment below if you liked this video, and don't forget to head over and get your copy of the Essential Music Theory cheat sheet. Once again, my name is Matthew Dale. Play better, sound great, and understand more.